I never thought I'd find myself in this situation, but here I am, pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet. My name is Jake, and I've been married to the love of my life, Emily, for 8 years. We have 2 kids, a nice house in the suburbs, and what I thought was a happy marriage. At least, that's what I believed until everything came crashing down around me. It all started a few months back when I noticed subtle changes in Emily's behavior. She seemed distant, often glued to her phone, and if I asked her about it, she'd dismiss it with a wave of her hand, claiming she was just busy with work. But the truth is, I knew my wife better than that. There's a certain vibe that comes with distraction, an air of secrecy that she couldn't mask, no matter how hard she tried. I chalked it up to stress from her job. She's a marketing executive and the pressure can be overwhelming at times. Still, something felt off. Things came to a head one night when we were supposed to have a date night. I had arranged for a babysitter, and I was looking forward to reconnecting with her. Emily, however, had other plans. Just as we were about to leave, she received a text message that turned her face pale. I didn't think much of it at the time, but I felt a nagging unease. When I asked her about it, she brushed me off, claiming it was a work emergency. I didn't press it. I wanted to trust her, to believe that she was still the woman I fell in love with. But then came the fateful day when everything unraveled. I was sitting on the couch, waiting for Emily to come home from work when my phone buzzed with a message. It was from her. At first, I thought she was just checking in, but as I read the message, my heart sank. It was a flirtatious text meant for someone else. I could hardly believe my eyes. "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe. I'll wear the red dress, just you and me." My stomach churned as realization hit. This wasn't just a cute nickname, it was meant for another man. I felt my blood run cold. I had stumbled upon the evidence I didn't want to see. I quickly composed myself and decided not to react immediately. I took a screenshot of the message, just in case I needed proof later. When Emily finally walked through the door, I could barely contain my fury, but I knew I had to confront her properly. "Hey, did you really mean to send this to me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Her eyes widened and I could see the panic wash over her face. "Jake, that's not what it looks like," she stammered, her usual confident demeanor crumbling. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, but instead I just stood there, heart racing, waiting for her to dig her own grave. She launched into a string of excuses, claiming it was just a joke, that she was texting one of her girlfriends. I knew it was all lies. The way she looked at me, that desperate plea in her eyes, told a different story. I felt betrayed, crushed under the weight of her words. The woman I trusted had just shattered everything I believed in. I thought I knew Emily, but now I doubted everything. I had to decide what I would do next. Would I confront her more aggressively? Would I put my foot down? Or would I just walk away? The whirlwind of emotions was almost unbearable, leaving me feeling helpless and lost. I knew I had to devise a plan. I needed to gather more information before making any rash decisions. Balancing my anger and hurt was proving to be one of the hardest things I had ever faced. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of my journey through betrayal, heartache, and revenge. The next few days were a blur. I avoided Emily as much as I could, trying to process the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. I felt like I was living in a parallel universe, where everything felt surreal and distorted. Every time she walked into the room, I could feel my heart racing, adrenaline pumping through my veins. Part of me wanted to scream, to confront her head-on, but there was also a part of me that needed clarity before I made any drastic moves. I started paying closer attention to her behavior. Each time she received a text, I felt my stomach clench, wondering if it was from him. I could hardly focus. At work, and my friends started to notice my mood swings. They'd ask me if everything was okay, but I'd just brush them off, not wanting to burden anyone with my problems. I knew I had to keep this to myself until I had more concrete evidence. One evening, after the kids had finally gone to bed, I decided to do some snooping. I felt like a detective, moving stealthily through the house, trying not to alert her to my intentions. I went into her office, a place that often felt off-limits, but tonight I needed answers. I rummaged through her desk, looking for anything that could give me a clue about who this other guy was. My heart raced as I found a small notebook tucked away in a drawer. Flipping through the pages, I found a list of names and numbers, most of which were just work contacts. But then, toward the end of the notebook, I found it. A name that made my blood boil. Mark. I recognized that name. He was a coworker of hers, someone she'd mentioned casually in passing, always in an upbeat tone. I felt a surge of anger wash over me as I read through the cryptic messages she had written about him. He's so charming. I love his sense of humor. He really gets me. It was all there, laid out like a map of her betrayal. I was seething as I closed the notebook and returned it to its hiding spot. I had confirmed my worst fears. Emily was having an affair. The feelings I had been trying to contain erupted into a whirlwind of rage and sadness. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I had trusted her, and now I was left with nothing but the bitter taste of betrayal. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, replaying everything in my mind, our memories, the love we had built, the family we created. It all felt like a lie. I imagined confronting her, laying bare the evidence I had found, watching her squirm under my gaze. But I also knew I needed to be strategic. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. I wanted to turn the tables on her. The next day, I reached out to a friend from college, someone who had gone through a similar situation years ago. I needed advice, a game plan. We met at a local coffee shop and I recounted everything that had happened. His face morphed from concern to understanding as I shared the details of my wife's actions. "Jake, listen. You need to take control of this situation," he said. "You've got to show her you're not the one she can mess with. If you just blow up, she'll twist it around and make you the bad guy." His words resonated with me. I needed to gather more evidence before I made my move. I decided to get creative. I would become a silent spectator in my own life, watching her every move while planning my revenge. Over the next few weeks, I kept a low profile at home. I watched Emily closely, noting her patterns and behaviors. I started staying up late, waiting for her to come home, sometimes even pretending to sleep on the couch when she arrived. I saw her texting in secret, giggling at messages that were clearly from Mark. Each giggle cut me deeper than the last. I soon learned that they were meeting more often than I suspected. One Friday evening, she told me she was going out with friends, a typical excuse that I had heard countless times before, but I had a hunch. I followed her. It was easy to track her since I had memorized the route she usually took. I parked a few blocks from the bar she had claimed she was going to with her friends. As I sat there waiting, I felt a cocktail of emotions: anger, betrayal, and a twisted sense of anticipation. I knew this was my chance to catch her red-handed. And when I finally saw her come out of the bar, laughing and flirting with Mark, my heart sank but also ignited a fire within me. I felt the weight of the world fall off my shoulders. I had the confirmation I needed. I snapped a picture of them together, embracing like they had no care in the world. It was time to take action. I would use this evidence to confront her, but I wouldn't do it like a wounded husband. No, I would make sure that she felt the full force of her betrayal. She would regret every moment she spent with him. It was time to turn the tables. As I sat in my car, heart pounding and adrenaline coursing through my veins, I glanced at the photo I had just taken. It was a clear shot of Emily and Mark, their faces lit up with joy as they leaned into one another, completely unaware of the storm brewing within me. I felt a mix of satisfaction and rage, knowing I had finally caught her in the act. It was both liberating and suffocating. The weight of betrayal pressed heavily on my chest. I waited in my car until they disappeared into the bar again, letting the anger simmer inside me. I didn't plan to confront her just yet. I wanted to gather more evidence to ensure that when I finally confronted her, there would be no way for her to wriggle out of it. She would have nowhere to hide, and I would have all the power. Over the next few days, I kept a low profile, acting as though everything was perfectly normal. Emily seemed oblivious to the fact that I had seen her with Mark, and I played my role well, putting on a facade of indifference. She would come home from work, often with a smile on her face, and I would respond with a polite smile of my own, masking the turmoil underneath. But I was still gathering evidence. I decided to set up a hidden camera in our living room. I had learned about these small, discreet cameras that could capture everything without being noticed. It felt wrong to invade her privacy like this, but I justified it to myself. She had already invaded my trust, so why should I feel guilty? I wanted to know how deeply this affair ran and whether she had any plans to end it or simply continue living a double life. The camera was small and easy to install. I set it up in a corner, pointing toward the couch where we often sat together. I wanted to capture her conversations, see if she ever mentioned Mark when she thought I wasn't around. As I activated the camera, a mix of excitement and dread washed over me. This was it. I was taking control. Days turned into weeks, and I continued to monitor the footage, looking for anything that could provide insight into her betrayal. Emily's calls and texts became more frequent, and I could see her become increasingly comfortable with her lies. I found myself replaying clips over and over, bracing for the moment she would slip up in front of the camera. Then came the night that changed everything. I had a front row seat to a conversation I never thought I'd witness. Emily was on the phone, pacing back and forth in the living room, her voice low and conspiratorial. I leaned closer to the screen, eager to catch every word. "Yeah, I miss you too. It's just hard to keep things from Jake. He's so suspicious lately," she said. My heart dropped, anger pulsing through my veins. She was still lying, manipulating the narrative to paint herself as the wronged party. "Don't worry, I'll figure it out. I love being with you, Mark. It's just complicated right now," she continued, and I felt my world tilt. The words "I love you" echoed in my mind like a taunt. The betrayal felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I could hardly believe it. She had the audacity to say that to him while I was sitting at home, completely unaware of the truth. I had all the evidence I needed. My heart raced as I contemplated how I would confront her. I had been planning this moment for weeks, but now that it was finally here, I felt a rush of uncertainty. Would I confront her calmly, or would I let the anger take over? The next day, I decided it was time to put my plan into action. I gathered all the evidence I had, the photo, the video clips, and the text messages I had saved. I felt like a lawyer preparing a case against a defendant who had wronged me deeply. I wanted her to see the truth, to understand the severity of her actions. That evening, I told Emily we needed to talk. She looked at me, a flicker of concern crossing her face, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "What's up, babe? You look serious," she said, trying to sound playful. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was about to happen. "I've seen everything, Emily. I know about you and Mark." Her smile faded in an instant, and I could see the panic rise in her eyes. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, but I pressed on, pulling out my phone and showing her the photo I had taken. "Do you want to explain this?" I asked, hoping my voice remained steady despite the storm of emotions raging within me. I watched as her face turned pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, she looked at the screen, then back at me, her mind racing as she tried to formulate an excuse. "Jake, please, let me explain," she finally managed to say, but I held up my hand, cutting her off. "No more lies, Emily. I have the video, the text messages, everything. I know you've been cheating on me. How long has this been going on?" The room fell silent as she stared at me, panic illuminating her features. In that moment, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. I had taken control of my narrative, and it felt intoxicating. I was no longer the victim. I was confronting my betrayer. Emily began to cry, but I wasn't in a place to feel compassion. I wanted to see her squirm, to see the consequences of her actions weigh down upon her. I was ready for whatever she had to say, but deep down, I knew this was just the beginning of a tumultuous journey that would lead to my next decision, one that would ultimately change everything. Emily's tears flowed freely as she tried to stammer out some kind of explanation. "Jake, please, it's not what you think," she said, her voice cracking. I watched her, my heart racing but my resolve firm. I had spent weeks preparing for this moment, hoping that when it arrived I wouldn't crumble. "Not what I think. You're in love with another man and you've been lying to me for months." I shot back, my voice rising. I could feel the anger bubbling over, but I didn't care. I wanted her to feel the weight of her deception. "Jake, it was just a fling. I didn't mean for it to happen," she pleaded, stepping closer and reaching out to me. I flinched at her touch, recoiling as if she was toxic. How could she act like this was something trivial? "A fling? You think that makes it better?" I exclaimed. You've been seeing him behind my back while I've been here, trusting you, loving you, and raising our kids together. You think you can just downplay this?" She opened her mouth to respond, but I cut her off again. "I have evidence, Emily. I know everything." I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the videos and photos I had collected, the evidence of her betrayal laid bare. I handed her the phone, forcing her to see the truth, the image of her and Mark laughing together, the messages filled with longing and affection. As she scrolled through the clips, I could see her expression shift from disbelief to recognition. The reality of her actions was settling in, and I could almost hear the gears turning in her head as she scrambled for a way to justify her actions. "I never meant to hurt you, Jake. It just happened. Mark and I had this connection. He understood me in ways you don't," she said, her eyes darting everywhere but my face. "Understood you? What about me, Emily? I've been here through thick and thin, and you just throw it all away for some connection with him. You're making excuses for something that's inexcusable." I was shouting now, my heart pounding as the anger surged through my veins. The reality of it all hit me hard. I felt like I was in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I had put my heart and soul into this family, and here she was, shattering it in front of my eyes. I could see the guilt forming on her face, but it was too little, too late. "I'm so sorry, Jake. I thought I could keep it separate. I thought it wouldn't affect you or the kids," she said, her voice now a whisper. "But it did. It has," I said, my voice steadying as I forced myself to breathe. I needed to think clearly. I couldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. "You think I can just forgive and forget? You think trust can be rebuilt after this?" Emily took a step back as if my words struck her like a physical blow. "What are you saying? Are you going to leave me?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to storm out, to throw everything away and never look back. But I had kids to think about. I had to consider what would happen next. I didn't want this to be a rash decision. I needed to weigh my options carefully. "I don't know what I'm saying, Emily. Right now I'm hurt. I need time to think. I can't just sit here and pretend like everything is okay when it's not," I replied, my voice almost a whisper now. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks, but I could see the wheels turning in her head, desperately searching for a way to salvage what was left of our marriage. "Jake, we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can fix this, I promise," she pleaded. "Fix this? You think you can fix a broken trust with counseling? It's not that simple," I said, shaking my head. "You've destroyed the foundation of our relationship, and now I'm left picking up the pieces." There was a long silence between us, the weight of the moment hanging heavy in the air. I could see the desperation in her eyes, and for a brief moment, part of me felt a flicker of sympathy. But it was quickly overshadowed by the anger and betrayal that had taken root in my heart. I needed to take control of the narrative, not just for me but for our kids. I took a deep breath, steadied my voice, and said, "I need to think about what happens next, Emily. But I can't do that while you're here pretending everything is fine. I need space." She looked at me, her eyes wide with shock and hurt, but I held my ground. "I'll be staying at a friend's place for a few days. I need time to figure out what I want." "Jake, please don't do this. I love you," she said, her voice breaking. "I loved you too, Emily. But love isn't enough when trust is gone. I'll be back to get my stuff later." With that, I turned on my heel and walked out, the door closing behind me with an almost finality. As I drove away, I felt a mix of relief and uncertainty. I had confronted her, laid bare the truth, and taken the first step toward reclaiming my life. But I also felt the weight of the impending decisions that lay ahead. I wanted revenge, but I also needed to think about my children and what kind of life I wanted to create moving forward. This was a turning point in my life, one I never imagined I would face. But I was determined to come out stronger, no matter how painful the process might be. I would figure out a way to rebuild, not just for me but for my kids. And as I drove into the night, I felt a flicker of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, I could turn this heartbreak into something powerful. The days following my confrontation with Emily were a whirlwind of emotions. I stayed at my friend Mike's house, trying to find some semblance of peace amidst the chaos in my mind. I had access to the kids, which was important to me. I didn't want them to feel the ripples of our turmoil, even if they sensed the tension in the air. I loved them too much to let them drown in our mess. I spent a lot of time reflecting on what I wanted. I had never imagined I would be in a situation like this, but now that I was, I had to embrace it. Should I fight for my marriage, or was it time to cut my losses and forge a new path? Couldn't help but think of the life I had built with Emily and whether it was worth salvaging. One night after the kids were asleep, I called a lawyer I had found online. I had no idea what to expect, but I knew I had to prepare for whatever came next. The moment I heard the attorney's voice, it made everything feel more real. You need to protect your interests, Jake. The first step is to gather all your financial documents and establish what you want in terms of custody. Custody. The word hung in the air like a dark cloud, reminding me of what was at stake. I thought about my kids, how this decision would affect their lives. I couldn't let Emily's mistakes dictate their future. I had to think about what was best for them, even if it meant making the hardest decisions of my life. After our call, I felt a sense of urgency. I started compiling documents, making a record of our finances, and jotting down notes about the kids' routines. I wanted to be ready for anything. It dawned on me that I was not just protecting my interests, I was preparing to fight for my children and their stability. The following week I met with my lawyer again. "I recommend you document everything," he said, his tone serious. "Keep track of her behavior, any interactions you have, and how she responds to the situation. This could be crucial if you end up needing to go to court." I nodded, feeling the weight of the reality set in. The more I learned about the legal process, the more resolute I became. I wanted to ensure I had a solid case, especially when it came to custody. I didn't want Emily's infidelity to affect my role as a father. Despite the turmoil, I also found some solace in the support of my friends. Mike was a constant presence, encouraging me to keep my head up and focus on the positives. "You're a good dad, Jake. You'll figure this out. Just take it one day at a time," he reassured me. I needed that perspective, something to keep me grounded amidst the emotional storm. But as the days turned into weeks, Emily started reaching out. At first, it was just texts, messages filled with apologies and pleas for another chance. "I miss you so much, Jake, can we talk?" Or, "I'm so sorry for what I did, I want to make it right." At first, I felt a twinge of guilt. Wasn't it noble to consider reconciliation? But every time I read her messages, I remembered the pain she inflicted. One afternoon, I reluctantly agreed to meet her for coffee. I thought it might give us some closure or at least provide an opportunity for her to take responsibility for her actions. When I arrived at the cafe, I found her sitting at a table near the window, fiddling with her hands, her face drawn and pale. "Thanks for meeting me, Jake," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I could see the regret etched on her face, but I wasn't ready to soften my stance yet. "Let's get one thing straight, Emily. I'm not here to discuss reconciliation. I'm done with that. I came to hear you out, but don't expect me to forgive you." Her eyes filled with tears and she nodded. "I get it. I just want you to know how truly sorry I am. I messed up, and I've realized how much I took for granted. I don't want to lose you or the kids." "Then why did you throw it all away for a fling?" I challenged, fighting the urge to let my anger get the better of me. "I didn't think it would go this far. I thought I could keep it separate, but I was wrong. I was selfish and I regret it every day," she replied, her voice trembling. "Regret doesn't change what you did, Emily. You broke my trust, and it's not something that can be fixed with apologies," I said, feeling the walls I had built around my heart strengthen. We spent the next hour talking, and while I could see she was genuinely remorseful, I struggled to feel anything other than anger. I had made up my mind. There was no going back to the way things were. I had to protect myself and my children from further heartbreak. As our conversation drew to a close, Emily looked at me with desperation in her eyes. "Jake, I'll do anything to make this right. Just tell me what you need from me." I glanced at her, seeing the pain reflected back at me. "Honestly, Emily, right now I just need space. I need to focus on what's best for the kids. I can't think about us while I'm trying to navigate this mess you created." She nodded, defeated, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy. But I pushed it aside, reminding myself that I was doing what needed to be done for my family. We parted ways, and as I drove home, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I had a plan, and it didn't include her. I was ready to move forward, to take back control over my life. The pain was still there, but I was determined to rise above it. I would protect my kids and create a life that was focused on healing and growth, no matter how difficult the journey ahead might be. As the days turned into weeks, I focused on establishing a routine for myself and the kids. I wanted to create an environment that felt stable and secure for them, a stark contrast to the chaos that had recently unfolded in our lives. I threw myself into parenting, ensuring I was present for every school event, every soccer game, and every bedtime story. The kids were my priority, and I wanted them to feel loved and protected. However, even amidst the efforts to move forward, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the unresolved feelings surrounding Emily and our marriage. I knew I needed to finalize things, to make a decision about the future rather than simply drifting. I called my lawyer again for advice on how to proceed with the divorce. I felt a sense of clarity as I spoke to him. I was ready to take the next step. The meeting was straightforward. "You're going to need to file the paperwork, Jake," he advised. "It may be emotionally taxing, but it's the best way to establish boundaries and protect yourself and your interests." I nodded, knowing he was right. The thought of officially ending my marriage was daunting but necessary. That evening I sat down to write the petition for divorce. My hands trembled as I typed, the reality of what I was doing settling in. I paused for a moment, staring at the screen. I remembered the happy moments with Emily, the laughter, the love we once shared, but those memories were overshadowed by her betrayal. I couldn't let sentimentality cloud my judgment any longer. Once I completed the paperwork, I felt a mix of relief and sadness wash over me. I was finally taking control of my future, but the weight of finality hung heavy in the air. I filed the papers the next day, my heart racing as I handed them over to the clerk. It felt surreal, as though I was stepping into a new reality that I had never anticipated. In the following weeks, Emily reached out frequently, often asking about the kids. I maintained a cordial relationship with her as I didn't want to create unnecessary tension. But every time she mentioned wanting to meet, I felt a mix of anger and betrayal bubble back to the surface. I had made it clear that I needed space, yet she seemed desperate for connection, even as I had clearly stated my stance. One evening, she texted me, asking if we could talk about the kids. Reluctantly, I agreed, knowing that we needed to establish some co-parenting boundaries. When she arrived, I felt the familiar tension in the air. Emily looked worn out, her eyes sunken and sad. I softened for a moment, feeling a twinge of sympathy, but I reminded myself of the truth. She had made her choices. "Jake, I just want to understand how we can make this work for the kids," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I want what's best for them, Emily. But right now, I need you to respect my space," I replied, keeping my tone neutral but firm. "We can co-parent, but I won't tolerate any more manipulation or attempts to push me back into a relationship that's already been damaged beyond repair." Her expression shifted to one of frustration. "I know I messed up, but I'm trying to make things right. Can't you see that?" "Making things right would have been being honest from the start," I countered, my voice steady. "This isn't a negotiation. I'm moving forward with my life. I hope you can do the same." I could see the tears welling in her eyes, and for a moment I felt a pang of regret, but I quickly dismissed it. I had to stay strong, both for myself and for the kids. I wouldn't allow her to pull me back into the emotional turmoil I had just begun to escape. After that meeting, I felt a newfound sense of empowerment. I was taking the steps needed to reclaim my life, and I was no longer letting Emily's choices dictate my happiness. I focused on spending quality time with the kids, creating new memories, and establishing a sense of normalcy in our lives. As winter rolled in, I found solace in my new routine. One Saturday afternoon, we went to the park, bundled up in our coats, laughing and playing in the snow. Watching my kids build a snowman and throw snowballs filled me with a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. I realized that while Emily had tried to shatter my world, she hadn't succeeded. My happiness didn't depend on her. It rested in the laughter and love of my children. Months passed, and with each day, I felt myself healing. I embraced the challenges that came with co-parenting and navigating my new life, focusing on the positives. I began to rediscover parts of myself that I had neglected, hobbies, friendships, and goals I had put on hold. I even started dating again, cautiously stepping back into the world of relationships. It felt liberating to reclaim my independence. One evening, while sitting on the couch, I reflected on everything that had transpired. I had been through the fire, and I had emerged stronger. I understood now that while betrayal had once shattered my heart, it had also opened the door to growth and resilience. I realized that I had learned invaluable lessons about trust, love, and self-worth. I vowed to never allow anyone to take advantage of my kindness again, and I promised myself that I would always prioritize my happiness and the well-being of my kids. As I closed my eyes, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I was ready for whatever the future held. I had taken control back, and I was determined to build a life filled with love, laughter, and happiness, one step at a time.